Welcome to Primerica and the LaMarque hierarchy. You're about to get started in a business that it has a potential to, create any kind of business you want, from a small part-time income or a business that will allow you to realize your dream life. It just really is up to you. I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things on these CDs, and the various CDs you're going to hear throughout this program. And I just want you to know that the intention of all this material is to create an ability for you to have the success that you want for you and your family. Our intention in putting this together, this project, and everything we're doing is to help you grow the kind of business that Jan and I have been able to grow, and to have the kind of life that, others just dream about having. What I'm going to start with, I'm going to tell you a little about my story, because I think it's important for you to have an understanding that even though we're having a significant amount of success right now, it always wasn't that way. When we first started, we were just like you. In fact, I'm the fifth of seven children, and my father was a Mexican immigrant with little education and labor his entire life. And we grew up in 1,000 square foot home with, one bathroom with 9 people in it. We weren't dirt poor, but we didn't have much, basically the necessities: a roof over our head, clothing, and loving family. But by no stretch of the imagination did I come from a place where I could see myself having the kind of success that we're having today, where we're making millions of dollars a year and helping other people to do the same thing. I never had anybody in my life that was financially successful, that had a successful business or did well financially. Everybody from my family came from, basically construction backgrounds, worked in factories, just work jobs where they were middle class or lower middle class. And I didn't have anybody to look to say, to have a belief that I could do really well in business. And I think that's important to understand, because even if you come from a background where it doesn't make sense for you to believe that you can do really well, I want you to know you can. There's no question in my mind that if you make the right decisions, the right choices with your time and your energy, you associate with the right people, and you just are really focused on what you want, that you can create that for your family as well. I dreamt of being successful in my teen years. When I was a teenager, with a buddy of mine, I used to go to Westwood, and then we'd drive around Bel Air and Beverly Hills and look at all of the incredible homes, mansions, estates. And I thought to myself, somebody at some point had to have figured out how to make a lot of money, how to do it. Everybody wasn't born into wealth. A lot of people have the misconception the only way that you get wealthy is that, you're born into it or you win the lottery. The fact is, over 80% of all millionaires earn it. They create it themselves. And, I thought to myself back then when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, that there's got to be a way to do it. I just need to figure it out. And I always thought about that. When I went to college, I had some really good friends in college, and I went to college, had to borrow money. I had to work in the summer times, and had to work while I was going to college. I had some friends that I played sports in college. I had a couple of friends. One was a guy named Kenjin, who was from Tokyo, Japan, and his father was very wealthy. They owned tons of restaurants and nightclubs and did really well. And he had money, and then another really good friend of mine was a guy named Drager, and he was from South Africa, and his family, they owned all the meat businesses in Johannesburg, from the raising of the cattle to the slaughter to the distribution of meat. And they're really wealthy. They'd go on vacation, on spring break or whatever. They'd be going to Aspen or Acapulco or Hawaii or something like that. And I'd be going home to paint my father's house. And that's how I grew up. But what I figured out about people that were doing really well, they seem kind of like, how do they do it? Are they different? Are they special? And I found out they're not. They're just like you and I. They get really, really good at a particular thing, and they develop the knack of making money, but they're not any better than we are. And so I started to believe that I could, if I could figure out a way to do it, that I could get there as well. And I started looking. I tried all kinds of different businesses. I got in the jewelry business, and right out of college, I worked for these guys who were very successful. They had 5 or 6 stores at that time. They own a bunch of real estate on Wilshire Boulevard in LA, and they're very wealthy. And I worked for them, and I started to see that they weren't all that bright either, that they were just normal people and that happened to be very good at a particular business, and they knew how to learn how to make money, but they weren't really that sharp. In fact, I didn't think they were very sharp at all, to be honest with you. And I figured, man, if these guys could run a business and make a lot of money, there's got to be a way to do it. Man, I've just got to figure out and find the right vehicle for me. So I tried all different kinds of things, and they never felt right. They didn't work. They didn't feel professional. I tried some of the direct marketing stuff, and like Amway, like Herbalife, all these different things. And the problem with all these different businesses in the direct marketing business was that none of them felt professional. That was the number one problem for me. And the other thing is that, you had to do so much to make any real money. It was really difficult to make money at those things. I didn't see, how you could make the kind of money that I wanted to make doing that. So I tried them. And then finally what happened, actually I got recruited into Primerica twice. This is a good lesson because the first time I got recruited into Primerica was by this guy who was actually the son-in-law of my godfather. And he wasn't really very good at the business, actually. So he recruited me. I submitted my application, but I never followed through with it. And he never followed up. And so that was like in 1981. 2 years later, 1983, this gal that worked for me when I was in the jewelry business, she was my office manager. Her father was in the, used to market pianos and worked for a company called Cole Piano and Organ. And she told him about me, and he contacted me, and then we sat down, and I ended up becoming a client. And he showed me the business. It made a lot of sense. I bought, I had cash value. He sold me term. I invested the difference, and everything made a lot of sense to me. So I actually was re-recruited, and this time I actually got my license, but I didn't do anything. I thought I had a good job. I was in the jewelry business, and I was making about $55,000 a year. This was back in 1983, 1984. My wife was an X-ray technician making about $35,000 a year. So, this was 20 some years ago. We're making, $80,000 to $90,000 a year, and which we thought was pretty good. And so I didn't feel a sense of urgency to do that. I wasn't sure. But this guy followed up with me. He followed up and he followed up. He kept calling me. He called my wife and talked to her when I wasn't available, and kept inviting me out to come to take a look at the business. And when they had special meetings or speakers, he would invite me. Most time I'd say I'd go. I didn't go, but he never stopped calling me. And then what happened? October 7th, 1983, my son, his name's Dak, who's now actually working with me in the business, was about to have his 5th birthday party. And I asked for 3 hours off from my boss. And his name was Steve Robbins. And I said, can I have 3 hours off? It's Dak's birthday. We're having a party at our home. And he thought about it. And he says, no, I don't think so. Friday's a really busy day for us. And I really need you to be there because it would hurt sales if you're not there. And I said, well, it's just this one Friday. It's his birthday and we have all our family coming. It's just 3 hours. He says, no, I need you to work. You got to work. You're the manager and I expect you to be there. And I went, to myself, I got so upset. I got really livid. I just went, this is incredible. I got 3 hours off. I work like a crazy person for this man. And I asked for 3 hours off for my son's 5th birthday. And he tells me no. And there's nothing I can do because if I don't show up, I probably get fired. And I just went, I'm not going to have another person have the ability to decide if I can spend time with my family, or I can take time off, or when I can take a break, or when I can go to lunch, or when I can take a vacation, or where I'm going to live because I'm, strapped into this position because of my job and my income. I said, I'm going to figure out a way to work for myself. And this is when, while this was happening, John, the guy who ended up recruiting me, kept calling and kept calling and kept following up. And so when that happened, I kind of snapped and the timing was right. The point I'm trying to make is a lot of the people you're going to try to get involved in your business right now, it's not going to be right for them right now. The timing, for whatever reason, is not going to be right. But if they're the right kind of people, you should really follow up with them, because he followed up with me, and I'm grateful to John every day that he followed up with me. I wouldn't have been able to create the business and the life I've been able to do had it not been for John following up. And I think anybody that you follow up with, if you do it in a professional way, is going to feel the same thing. So what ended up happening is I got started in Primerica because I just knew I couldn't work for somebody again. And maybe some of you run into that. I promise you there's a lot of people out there that feel the way that I felt. So I started doing this, and I found out that Primerica was a perfect fit for me, And I found out that I really enjoyed teaching because I looked at Primerica not as a sales business, but really as a teaching business. It's teaching people how to get their financial life in order, teaching people how to build a business of their own and become successful and become, the person they want to become. So I really took a teaching approach as opposed to a pure selling approach. And I started really focused on helping people. And I really I meant that. A lot of people talk about that, but I really never worried that much about making money. Of course, I wanted to make money, but I really worried more about, taking care of the client, taking care of the people that I recruited, teaching them what to do. And so, it just was a perfect fit. And as a matter of fact, when I was in college, my degree's in psychology with a minor in Spanish, but I was going to be a teacher, and I ended up, needing a job, because I was married with a child and a child on the way, and I was broke, so I just needed a job. So that's how I got it. And I got into the sales business by accident. I think a lot of people end up getting in the jobs that they're in, the professions they're in, kind of by accident. It's not even intended, they kind of fall into it. It's probably not a real good way to lead your life. I think you should be a little more planned out, but that's how most people end up. I know that's what happened to me. And so I decided that as I started building my business, I was going to really build it and do it correctly and become successful at it and have fun with it and enjoy the process. And I could see that you could make really a lot of money doing this if you were good at it. So I decided to get good. My wife, Jan, on the other hand, was really nervous. I had what was, quote, a good job back then. And we had struggled early in our marriage financially, trying to get things going. Got married when I was a junior in college, at the end of my junior year, and she kind of supported me during my senior year. And then, we didn't make a lot of money, and we struggled financially. And we were now at that point when I decided to do Primerica, actually doing fairly well. And she was afraid of me trying something and failing at it, and then, jeopardizing our family's, financial security. And which of course is understandable. I think if you have a partner or spouse, that's probably something somewhere in the back of their mind. They're probably thinking that. But nevertheless, she did support me to at least start part-time. I started part-time, and kind of this is how it went for me. My first year, I did this thing part-time, and I used to work, when I was working in the jewelry business, I used to work evenings and weekends. And so I'd have Monday and Wednesday off, and I'd work Tuesday from noon to 10 and Thursday, Friday, noon to 10. And then Saturday, pretty much from 9 in the morning to about 7. And then Sunday from, 11 to 6. So I didn't have a lot of time to spend with my family on the weekends and stuff like that. So my days were off were kind of weird. And so what ended up happening is I started doing Primerica on my days off, and I started to, do okay. My first year I made $18,000, and I was learning the business. I got my licenses. But towards the end of that year, on the 10th month, I was, before that, I was starting to think, I really like this. I'm really enjoying doing this. I can see a lot of potential. I started meeting some people that were making, several $100,000 a year, and they weren't really that good. And I went, oh my God, if these guys can make this kind of money, what could I make if I applied myself? So I started thinking about going full time and quitting my job. Didn't talk to my wife about that, but I started to think about that. And then what ended up happening is, I was talking to other people about going full time, and she kind of heard it through the grapevine that I was going full time. I hadn't really talked to her about it yet because I knew how she'd react. So I said, yeah, I'm going to quit my job and go full time. And she kind of panicked, and we had a big kind of blowout about that. And I basically, what I told her was, I've always provided, and I've never not provided. And, if you don't trust me, if you don't believe in me, why are we even married? And that's what I basically told her. And she talked to her mom about it, and her mom, who's not the most positive person on earth, she thought that her mom would side with her and say, tell her that, I shouldn't do that. But, she amazingly, she said, he's right. You ought to give him a shot, see what he can do. And so she was a little shocked by that, and she did. So then she supported me, and we started getting this thing going. And I went full time, and I quit my job, and I decided just to get after it and make this thing happen. I started talking to everybody, and I'll talk more about what I think you needed to get started, but I started talking to everybody. I put a list together and blah, blah, blah. I started just talking to everybody I could possibly talk to about my business. and I'm making about 18 grand and everything, most of that towards the end of the year. The next year, my second year, I started to get a little better at the business. I made about 35,000. So started to have some progress, and she was still working extra. In fact, she was working an extra job so that we wouldn't have to have stress financially. And then in my third year, which is 1986, I made 86,000. Things started to really turn around, and she was able to quit her job and come and help me in the office. And then when she came and helped me in the office, I could focus more intently on finding new people and developing those people. And then the next year, 1987, a year later, my income jumped to 409,000, and everything changed. My whole life kind of just completely transformed. All of a sudden I go on from making $6,000, $7,000 a month to $30,000 a month. And man, it was just, it was amazing. And then what ended up happening from there, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit. The next year I started developing a lot more people. My income jumped to 855,000 in my fifth year, and I saved about $1 million in cash, and I was financially independent by that time. And then things just got better and better. So that's kind of how I got started, the short version, but just wanted to share that with you because, a lot of times when you see people that are having a lot of success, you think that they're lucky. You think that they just all of a sudden, were born with some gift or something. And in my experience of the people that I know, and I know a lot of people today who are very successful, most of them struggled. Most of them had challenges. Most of them had a lot of setbacks. In fact, some of my most successful friends have gone bankrupt 2 or 3 times before they made it. And now they're worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the one common theme that I find around successful people is they've had lots and lots of challenges, and they've grown from those, and they've just kept persevering, and they've been tenacious, and they never let up on their dreams. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. So I just want you to think about that as you're starting your Primerica journey here. I talk to people a lot about, why we're the best hierarchies in Primerica. There are a lot of hierarchies in Primerica. There's over 150,000 people, and I have about 8,000 or 9,000 of them, maybe 10,000 of them. I'm not sure right now. Growth changes every month. But why we're the best hierarchy is, our people, one of the things I've always focused on is that teaching people how to make money. And in my organization, our people make the most money per capita in Primerica. We have a philosophy that I believe just simply works better than any other one. And the proof's in the success of our people. So, everybody has a different philosophy. There's a lot of ways to get from point A to point B, but there are some ways that I believe are better. I think ours is better. I'm a little bit biased in that respect, but the numbers prove that to be true. In fact, in 2005, my payroll in my business was $60 million. So, that's a pretty good business to have that many people making that kind of money. So I think that your choice to be in Primerica and your choice to be with somebody within my hierarchy is the best possible choice you can make. And I think you'll find that to be true as you start meeting and talking to other people around the country.